Hello, Simone. In this episode, we are going to be going through just a summation for anyone who has been out of the picture of all of the major things that the Trump administration has been implementing. It
Ooh.
has, from an outsider's perspective, just been win after win after win. I have been incredibly wow, I didn't even know it was possible for a president to be this effective. And we are going to start with ICE. So ICE has made an average of 710 immigration arrests daily for the first few days of Trump's term.
Oh my
This
gosh.
is up from 311 under President Biden. Now, I am going to be showing you a series of videos about the types of people who are being arrested under this. And so two things here, right? So first,
And they say, oh, this law, we need to be able to deport people who have committed violent crimes. That is the law of the land presently.
For I knew that even though some of you supported us, some others were looking at me and thinking, "You're a liar! You're a liar!"
Okay.
except when you actually see the people being arrested, it not only is it criminals, but it's criminals who have obviously had the government covering for them. I mean, if you are an illegal immigrant to the United States, and the government knows you're an illegal immigrant, and you've had 17 previous convictions, the
17.
Se
Oh.
17 is one guy, and this guy thanked Biden, he thanked Obama. The
Oh.
government is clearly covering for you at this point, right? Like, this is not normal.
I'm not going back to Haiti.
One of those threats is this illegal alien from Haiti. ICE says he's a gang member with 17 criminal convictions in recent years.
Trump, you feel me? Yo, Biden forever, bro. Thank Obama for everything that he did for me, bro.
And I'd like you to consider all of these people, in the context of the Jan 6 protesters who, in a peaceful protest were arrested because some people within the protest were violent. That is broadly what happened at that protest.
Yeah.
And I would like to edify those of you who still happen to be misinformed about what happened that day. There was no way for the vast majority of protesters to know they were not allowed inside the building. In fact, all evidence to them, given that we now have video of the Capitol guards giving tours of the Capitol building to the protesters, every bit of evidence would have suggested that they were allowed in there and that the Capitol guards had let people in there. And that they have been in jail. They had families, kids at home for 4 years, okay, jobs. Do you know what that does to your career? Do you know what that does to your family?
Yeah.
When you have especially a stay-at-home wife and 4 kids, as some of them did, this is horrifying that this sort of political prisoner banana republic situation was allowed. Now you look at what they have been protecting and allowing, okay? And so if you want to react to some of these.
Within moments, the officers are on the move, with eyes on their first target.
Looks like we got movement, target vehicle coming out.
They quickly take him into custody. He's an MS-13 gang member wanted in El Salvador for aggravated murder. And he has an Interpol red notice out for his arrest.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, El Salvador wants this guy back for murder.
So there's an open warrant out for him, and he's just walking around in the U.S.?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Bro,
ICE Boston quickly takes down its next targets, including this illegal alien from Brazil who has an Interpol red notice for armed robbery. This Salvadoran illegal alien charged locally with rape and released by a sanctuary jurisdiction.
Señor, ¿cómo se llama?
And this Dominican illegal alien charged with assault with a deadly weapon and heroin trafficking.
Oh. Oh, gosh.
This
This is concerning. So do we just not honor warrants for people? What's going on?
No, it's
here?
that the government actively, if you are the right skin color, they will actively attempt to protect you no matter what you have done.
So if this were a white citizen, do you think they would have been arrested?
1,000%.
Oh.
If they were a white legal citizen, they would have been arrested. This is 100% about a multi-tiered society of rights. If you are one skin color, one class, you get and keep in mind, this isn't for every one of these skin colors. This if you have to fit in these certain categories, illegal immigrant or something like that. I should clarify here that the Democrats do control the Black ethnic identity. So if you do anything undemocratic, it gets revoked. So for example, if you are leading the Proud Boys, for example, your black card is completely revoked and now you're a white supremacist. Because apparently white supremacist just means anyone who does not go along with whatever the authoritarians tell them. You get these debit cards that pay for your lifestyle. You get your housing paid for. You can rape people all you want. You can be in gangs. You can be in, none of the laws apply to you. If you are a working person in the United States and you go on a peaceful protest, you can be in jail for 4 years. This is a society, and as I've said this will be remembered alongside the Jim Crow laws. This is a society where your human dignity, the amount that society is supposed to affirm you, is determined by your ethnicity, your immigration status, imagine if one of these people was trans, right? They're definitely not going to jail. So here's one.
Officers also arrested this Guatemalan MS-13 gang member facing gun charges. ICE says he was released from local custody just the day before. Their detainer request was ignored because of sanctuary policies.
He was actually even released from local custody the day before, and they had denied the detainer request from ICE, saying, hey, let us know where you're releasing this guy.
Oh,
so that we can pick him up. Gun charges and a known MS-13 gang member. This is one of the most dangerous gangs in the United States. They are actively supporting the gangs over helping American citizens at this point. We need massive clean out. And there was another incident here of.
We also learned after we were done filming that ICE picked up another target on the other side of the city. This was a previously deported Honduran illegal alien who was arrested locally and is facing charges for raping a woman while holding a gun in her mouth.
And the police are protecting him.
Oh, wow. I wish we could. Are there interviews with these people, like justifying why they did this? I really, really want to understand, like, what their perception of reality. Like, do they believe that these charges are not true? Perhaps do they? Like, I just want to understand how they could be allowing this to happen.
They 100% believe the charges are true. A lot of they were involved in a lot of the charges. These are local police departments.
Do you think this is similar to the grooming gangs, where it was like, well, we don't want to cause a race riot? Or
no,
what?
It's not even that they don't want to cause a race riot. If you believe that, that is a lie. You've bought into the lie already. It's
well, I want to understand what these people are thinking, because I'm
telling you what they believe. They believe that if you are a certain skin color, you should be allowed to grape with impunity.
No, I just don't think people believe that. That's crazy. That's straw manning to the highest degree.
Differently, Simone, because I think that you're buying into their BS. Okay, they believe very, very, very strongly of this. So they might say, if you worded it to them, grape with impunity, they'd be like, I don't believe that. And then we'd be like, here is a person who was like caught graping. Do you believe that the state should have the right to imprison them? They'd say no. Do you believe that the state should have the right to punish them? They'd say no, because of their skin color, because they'd say like, oh, well, that's the way it works. And this is the way it always is with this sort of like Jim Crow stuff, with this sort of, different laws for different ethnicities. And if you look at this, you can look at the Selena Gomez. Did you see her crying thing?
No, the actress?
Yeah, where she put out this crying video about how my people are being rounded up, and then she deleted it.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked.
And here I can only guess. Why are you protecting the rapists here? Like, they're like, oh, it's innocent people. And it's like, well, why are there these people with 17 convictions of it's innocent people? If you cared about the innocent people, you should have been getting rid of these people, because these people were in the shelters with the innocent people. You didn't care about the innocent people. But I get you, Selena Gomez. You're people. You're P. Diddy's people, right? You're in it with all the rapists, right? You just can't wait to get to graping again, can you? Just a day away from grape. You're like, people can't resist going on a grape tour of the U.S. Well, why can't I do that? That's Selena Gomez's people. And if you look at the cities in the U.S., like the Bambi Larson, who was murdered by an illegal immigrant who had 6 retainer requests. This means that ICE had said, hey, can we take this person out? Can we take this person out? And these, what do you call them? Sanctuary cities. They're saying, no, we won't let you. So in California, major cities like this, not just people are dying, people are committing homicide, people are committing rape, people are committing arson, and they're being protected by the local jails. And you know what happens as a result of this? Because ICE still needs to operate in these cities. There's still ICE people in these cities. This is why innocent people, or innocent as they are, I mean, being an illegal immigrant is a crime, are the ones being picked up in these cities, because we can't get the people in the jails. ICE is asking you for the people in the jails. You're saying no. When you say no to the people in the jails, you force your local ICE to go to the people who are lower down their list. The people in their homes.
Wow.
This is whenever you hear of an innocent person being deported, that is because of the sanctuary laws. Ask what city are they in? Almost every single time you will see they were in a sanctuary city.
Really? Gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And when we talk about things like voter ID and stuff like that, and how corrupt this whole system is, there's been a fight graphic that Dems always win voter ID requirements. Republicans always lose them, right? The real numbers are almost as bad. Of the 49 states called as of November 8th, Harris won 19, including only 7 with voter ID statutes, okay? Whereas of the 30 states that Trump won, 28 had voter ID statutes.
Oh, Lord.
You basically cannot win because I mean, there's no reason you would have that. That's like an insane thing. It just prevents Republicans from winning. But let's talk about the whole Colombia debacle, because I loved this. This was hilarious.
Okay.
So Trump sends down 2 big military planes full of illegal immigrants, okay? And the Colombian president, trying to act all tough, sends them back. And Trump says, okay, you want to play tough, buddy? We're going to do a 25% starting today tariff on all Colombian goods. It goes up to 50% next week. Everyone who's connected to your family immediately loses any protection in the United States, visas in the United States. And we're doing all these overturns on stuff. What were some of the other things he did? I can't remember them all, but it was a lot.
With Colombia?
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing was that Trump was like, well, all right, well, I hope you enjoy tariffs. And
well, no, travel bans. He did travel bans on Colombia. He did.
Yeah, he was going to basically he was going to make an example of Colombia, because one, it would be really bad if a precedent was set that countries could just refuse to receive their citizens back. And Trump really stomped down on that really quickly. And then the next thing you know, the Colombian president is offering to fly over the presidential plane to pick up.
I love that. What a simp with his tail between his legs. Presidential plane to pick up the immigrants after that. I mean, Trump knows what he's doing this time.
The Colombian president was also making a politically savvy move by basically saying like, oh, the United States is sending these people over handcuffed and, uncomfortable and treating them terribly. And I'm going to treat them great.
Hold on. Let's see what he had to say about the people who did come over, okay? He goes, this was recently after he did accept them. He goes, they are not criminals. Being a migrant is not a crime. And I'm like, oh, okay. Being an illegal migrant is not a crime if they're asylum seekers, Mr. President. Are you saying that they are asylum seekers? Are you saying that you have turned your country into such a hole? Or that they are so afraid of you and your government that it's not a crime that they're illegal immigrants? Oh, you're not saying that? Then yeah, it absolutely is a crime, sir. And we know from the other stat that they likely are criminals. My bet is you just made this up. Because you seem like a really shitty person, and your own country thinks that. That's why your polling is so low. Sorry.
Ouch. You got to twist.
Anyway, of Americans, 65% of Americans are strongly in favor of deporting illegal immigrants who have been convicted of a violent crime. 18% are somewhat in favor.
Well, and also the evidence really backs this up. Near the end of last year, there were some really great Substack posts. I think even Scott Alexander did one on crime and punishment and what actually lowers levels of crime. Mm-hmm. And what I came away from all this reading was basically deterrents don't really work. Threatening jail doesn't really work, but removing people from the population can make somewhere a safer place. And
Yeah.
There's something about deportation of anyone who commits any kind of crime just so great, because it's not like they're even in prison. We're not paying for them to be in prison. They're just not here anymore. And that's kind of the most important thing with criminals, isn't really what happens to them. Like, if we're talking about the well-being of a state, right? And these are people and everyone matters, blah, 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 right? But like, if we're only talking about the well-being of a community, the only thing that matters is the criminal here or is the criminal not here? And not here is what you want. It doesn't matter if they're being punished or trained or, taught or given more resources. No, you just really don't want them to be here anymore, especially if they're a repeat offender, in which case you extra don't want them. Yeah. So this is great. I mean, deportations are amazing. They're not rotting in jail. They're not here.
But I'd also point out how rare this ideology is that has taken over our government and our, court system. If you look at the amount of Americans who are in favor of deporting illegal immigrants who are convicted of a violent crime, 65% strongly in favor, 18% someone in favor, 10% neither oppose or in favor, only 4% oppose. Only 4% oppose this. And yet this was the law of our land under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
If you do not think when you're like regular Democrats, it's like, well, regular Democrats don't represent the portion of the party in the deep state or that control the Democratic Party apparatus anymore. And there's been some recent news around NYC fixing itself, by the way, and I can put some clips here.
So as of October 31st, New York had 212 asylum shelters scattered throughout the city, but it looks like that's about to change, as the city just did a major 180 and announced plans to shut 25 of them.
This nation is now confirming some migrants are starting to leave on their own, attempting to self-deport ahead of the second Trump presidency.
The peak 17 months ago, the city was welcoming 4,000 migrants per week, but things have dramatically changed. Last week, less than 400 showed up and about 1,000 left.
Migrants who are going through their asylum proceedings are actually cutting things short on their own.
The city is about to become a battleground where a civil war of sorts over immigration policy plays out, as the mayor tries to carry out policies the majority now say they're in favor of without the approval of local lawmakers who are proud of our sanctuary city status and will stop at nothing to make sure it survives, even if it doesn't actually help people. Because law-abiding immigrants, which include asylum seekers with a legal right to remain in America while their court case plays out, do not benefit from a sanctuary city. They can reside anywhere they want without fear of deportation. But that's not the case for gang members, criminals, terror watch list suspects.
But nature is healing, which is to say that the NYC system is shutting down the shelters. I mean, they were a sanctuary state, right? And what people don't understand is if you are a legal immigrant, you don't need to be in a sanctuary state. If you're not like MS-13, if you're not a violent criminal, you don't need to be in one of these places. And so these were only places for people who broke the law. And so it created essentially grape houses. I don't know what to call them other than that. When you went to one of these New York shelters, that's what you were going in for, because they were controlled by the gangs. They were controlled by these really bad people who New York was protecting, because again, they had developed these systems that were just built on the systematic dehumanization of people based on their ethnicity.
Awful.
Now, let's talk about other things he's done, right? Some other fun stuff. He initiated steps to withdraw from the World Health Organization.
All right.
Which, as we know from, any evidence on this, is basically a Chinese organization at this point. We saw this during COVID. We saw this with the COVID cover-up. It was horrifying. He criticized Ukraine's president for not seeking dialogue with Russia. Absolutely valid at this point. What, does Ukraine think they're going to win their land back? Like, how is that even going to work at this point, right? Like, the war right now is just a life lost by the day thing. Signed an executive order promoting energy resource use in Alaska. So good for it. Alaska's a big place. You're not going to what are you going to do? Make some fish go extinct? I'll never understand the complaints about oil pipelines in Alaska. It's yes, what do you want to put the oil on? Cars? Because that's what it's going on now. That is way worse for the environment.
Yeah, but I mean, when I was a kid and I heard about oil pipelines in a negative light, of course, my assumption was there are these leaky pipes running through parks. There's just pools of oil around them. Little did I know that these are very sophisticated systems with very, very strong and smart leak detection sensors, so that instantly
they don't want to lose the oil.
No, the oil's expensive, but also they're legally required to be extremely careful about environmental impact. And yeah, it's a lot less. The carbon footprint of oil that has been moved along in a pipeline is a lot lower than oil that has been moved along by a truck. And the accident danger, it's also scary. I mean, you and I, whenever we're on a road and we see a giant oil tanker going around.
Yeah, there's also a potential cost to human life from trucks.
Yes, it's a giant bomb moving around. It's not safe.
The people who are against this are just that category of Democrat who just does not care about reality. They only want to win their aesthetic fights, and they don't care about the damage they're doing to the environment, because I don't even think the Democrats are the party of the environment anymore. Republicans are the party of actual environmentalism now, but haven't they been, since Teddy Roosevelt, right? So I was looking for a Captain Planet clip that involved oil to somehow work into this. And then I found this horrifying Captain Planet clip I am compelled to share with you.
I just don't get why people bring kids into the world when they can't provide for them.
Although population numbers in less developed nations may be greater, a child in a developed country uses up to 30 times more resources than a child in a less developed nation.
That is amazing.
It seems unfair. I cannot know this.
Wheeler, you and Lincoln have too many kids. It must stop. If we ever were to get married.
What?
How many kids would you want to have?
Why?
Because I definitely don't want more than 2.
But anyway, they revoked the ban on oil and gas development in federal waters, because why would we be against that? We need to exploit those resources. One of the most important things to geopolitical global stability has been our oil recently. That's why the Russia oil ban cutoff was possible at all, was because of the amount of oil that the US is producing now. And who does it hurt when we produce more oil? It hurts the Middle Eastern countries. It hurts Russia. It hurts Venezuela. No good guys are hurt in the process of this, of the making of this product. They streamline permitting for energy projects and reviewing regulations on energy production, temporary withdraws all areas of the outer coastal shelf from consideration, offshore wind leasing, and halts the insurance of new renewable options permit leases and loans for both offshore and onshore wind projects. I am 100% about this wind project stuff. Wind projects are if you can make them cash positive, go for it. But offshore wind things, this is just pointless. Go nuclear. What are you doing? Thoughts on wind stuff, Simone? The little bird blenders.
The bird blenders. I mean, it's cool, but it's not the most effective thing we can be doing. So from a cost effectiveness standpoint, it's just a lot harder to justify things like offshore wind farms. Very, very expensive to develop.
So now to other things. He did the hiring freeze. He then goes to everyone and he goes, hey, I'll pay you till September. So what is that, 8 months?
Yeah.
And he says, if you decide to resign now, I can't promise your job will still be here then. But, if you want to keep your job, we are trying to close down a lot of departments right now. We have finally instituted the Schedule F program, which the Biden administration threw it down before it could be fully implemented, which thank God it's finally here now. So if you don't know what Schedule F is, it recategorizes some federal jobs as at-will employment, which we absolutely need to do. We're going to do another episode after this one on just how bad the deep state has gotten. That will chill you to the bone. The government needs to be gutted. It needs to be gutted like Twitter was gutted, okay? Remember when everyone was like, oh, the Twitter, you can't fire 98% of people, it'll stop working. And now everyone's like, it's actually kind of better than it's ever been. Yeah, that's what we need here, okay? And people are like, no, it's not better than it's ever been. It's like, the community notes feature is definitely better. And I remember some downtime early on. I haven't heard of downtime on Twitter in a long time.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, no, it's fine.
It didn't need those people. They were completely useless. They just sabotaged X when they left, removing parts of the code base, which is what caused that downtime. It wasn't due to the lack of staff.
It was active sabotage? Oh my gosh.
Active sabotage.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, they didn't have documentation on things, or they took the documentation documentation they had, and they left parts of the code base like basically really vulnerable. Some of them, it looks like, may have actively attacked the code base after leaving. So yeah, it was ridiculous. And we'll see this with the government when we get rid of 98%. Which is what I'm hoping for here, okay, buddy? I love they keep trying to drive a wedge between Trump and Elon, if you've seen it with all of these things, and it doesn't appear to be working at all. He reversed the Biden-era protections on transgender individuals in the military. And he did this. I love it. If you read the order, it says, because, I almost swear, somebody must watch our podcast. It said, because being transgender is incompatible with the selflessness expected of a military professional. And could any
that's so funny.
I mean, as we said on this podcast, you know, the biggest complaint we have against transgenderism, outside of the increased risk in unaliving oneself that comes with a belief system that doesn't have any correlatory in any other culture in human history. So it's very clearly a culturally tied phenomenon. Yes, there are different gender expressions, but there is no example anywhere of a sudden obsession, or not even sudden, but an obsession at all, with people seeing you as a different gender and then being willing to unalive yourself or threatening to unalive yourself if people don't see yourself as a different gender. This is not a thing. So like, obviously, right? So if this is a mimetic virus and not a natural part of the human condition, specifically this obsession with your gender and wanting to unalive yourself if people don't affirm that gender, and once you have caught this mimetic contagion, you have a 50% chance of attempting to unalive yourself. That's a huge deal. Like, I don't understand how people can be like, oh, this is a completely benign thing, or like, just let them think what they want to think about themselves. It's like, well, it appears to be a completely culturally isolated contagion, and it's correlated with a 50% chance of not wanting to be alive anymore. Of course, I'm going to have concerns about this spreading. But this obsession with validation, I mean, we all want validation, right? And these people basically found a hack to force the community to validate them. And they undergo enormous financial, emotional costs to achieve this validation. But I see that as a sign that these individuals fundamentally haven't dedicated their lives to other people, but have lives dedicated to the way other people see them, just because of the costs involved in it, the way things work right now. And then he also was talking about deployment. He's like, look, the government's going to pay for this surgery. Then it's 8 months to recover from it. And we already have this giant problem with people saying, oh, I can't deploy because of medical reasons, which is apparently a big problem in the military right now. If you have all of these, you know, medical surgeries, is that not going to be even more plausible? Or you're not going to see even a higher rate of that? And keep in mind, this only makes up 0.1% of our military. So again, I don't see why we're trying to prevent this. It does seem fundamentally incompatible with, again, to not say, yes, I understand I would prefer people see me as the other gender. Yes, I would prefer, but I don't need to undergo all of these costs. I don't need to force the federal government to pay all these costs. I don't need to force everyone to, against their consent, see me a certain way, validate me a certain way. You know, I think, Simone, what you said that was so good is the difference between gay rights is saying, I want the right to be able to get married and act in a way that just doesn't feel unnatural for me. Whereas transgenderism is, what they're fighting for now is, I want to be able to force you using law and legal statute to act in a way that feels uncomfortable to you. And this is a gendering, and I think that that's just like, yeah, this is clearly a lack of selflessness that would lead anyone to think that this is normal behavior. And that we saw that at the highest levels of the military under Biden, with the, the generals and stuff like that. Thoughts on this before we go further?
No, I'm just glad we're seeing so much pushback already from the Trump administration on all these things.
Yeah, and I note here, you could be a transgender individual and be a good person. You could be a Scientologist and a good person, but I don't want Scientologists at the top level of the military, right? But the point being is if you know Scientologists, and I know Scientologists, they are perfectly nice people. I am still deeply suspicious of them and their motivations when I'm interacting with them. It's the same with transgender individuals. I think that they're very nice people. I don't think it's their fault that they got sucked into this ideology. And I feel really, really bad for them. But we have to think about the people it hurts next, and we need to think about, where are their motivations and loyalty, and what have they signaled through costly signaling about the way they've chosen to live their lives? I'd also note here that Trump struck a significant blow to transgender surgery for children, specifically in the order protecting children from chemical and surgical mutilation. Specifically, what this did is it prevents federal funding, sponsorship, promotion, or assistance for gender transition procedures. It limits these to 19 years old, so you have to be over 19 years old for this to be relevant. So keep in mind, he's still allowing federal funding for transgender procedures over 19 years old. Like, people who act like he's like radically anti-trans are just delusional. He's not like trying to even not erase trans people or stop transgender surgery. He's just saying wait until you're old enough to make, the decision to get a tattoo. The order targets puberty blockers, hormone therapy, surgical procedures, and related gender transition. It attacks federal health programs, including Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE for military families that are to exclude coverage for gender-affirming care for minors. And federal agencies are instructed to ensure that recipients of research or education grants do not provide gender procedures to minors. This is going to be a big problem for universities that are all in on this stuff. The order mandates a review of guidelines from World Professional Association for Transgender Health, WPATH, which it dismisses as quote-unquote junk science, which we now know it is because we have the WPATH leaks. And we know that they were just lying. And like, why haven't every country thrown this out?
And I'd add to that thing we were talking about trans people earlier. I'd note here, like, especially with trans youth, we now know from the Gender Disconnectedness and Nonconforming Youth 2023 study that more than 9 out of 10 trans people at the age of 11 identify with their birth gender by age 23. This thing is just a fad that people end up long-term identifying with if it is affirmed in them. That's the core thing that is the problem. It's the affirmation. And unfortunately, this sucks for individuals who bought into this and now have trouble dissociating themselves with this new identity and the affirmation they're getting from it, but it's killing people, and there's nothing, we need to at some point say, well, yes, I understand you, leper, like, I have nothing against you, but you're still infectious, right? Like, you're killing people at this point, and you deserve to be loved in your leper colony, but we need to try to save as many humans as possible at this point, right? And if it's causing this level of mental distress, and yet it does not appear to be it appears to be a very transitory, very non-permanent thing when it's not being affirmed, that to me just leaves me with very few options. The next is we have the steps to dismantle diversity. Oh, we'll get to that next. He rescinded policies requiring federal contractors to promote affirmative action or diversity programs, and then also it put like a spending ban on everything that was going to DEI programs, anything that was promoting abortion, anything that was promoting, any of these
No. He put a spending freeze on all federal grant programs, period, to make sure that they were devoid of those things before receiving more money.
But he's done more than that. So in the executive order, Trump signed terminating DEI programs and policies and activities
with the exception of Medicaid, which is still up and running, but other grant programs.
So the administration, as it has shut down these DEI programs, has moved to merit-based systems, quote, ones that work on individual initiative, skills, performance, hard work over diversity, considering in publications. Agencies are required to compile a list of all the contractors and grantees involved in DEI activities since 2021. Oh, they're going to drag their legs and try to burn those records. These lists will inform recommendations. So they're basically, and people have been freaking out about this because a lot of these DEIers, they've been quote unquote put on lists. If you look at their YouTubes and stuff like that, they are panicking. They are losing their jobs. They are already, because this has hit hard and fast, and I think a lot faster than any of them really anticipated this hitting them. They have been attempting to find ways to rename their programs, which has been a common thing, or rename their positions, as we have seen a number of times. I have mentioned in another episode that's going to go live after this, where I think that the way to handle this is to put out a tips program. And the tips program works like this, because Dems are going to try to flood it. Anyone who has given a good tip, and you might even be able to get your tip like boosted by connections to certain like known people. So what the government might do is go out and sort of anoint people as vetters. So this could be like libs of TikTok. This could be like, various people like this, right? Like well-known Cremu or Us or any
any other number of accounts that are out there. You could even have like a Joe Rogan one, but basically various intermediate influencer accounts, right? So these intermediate influencer accounts, to prevent the Dems from flooding it, can upvote or downvote things. As soon as one goes through, if it is a good lead and ends up in something being done, they get flagged and anything they send immediately goes to the top of the pile. And so this creates a system that Democrats can't easily impede, but it creates a distributed network out to the average American, where when you see DEI being done in some company that's getting federal grants or some company that's a federal contractor, which I think is what they should be focused on next, you can easily whistleblow on this, especially if it's under a different name. And I think the other thing they did that is really, really smart is compile lists. And I would go further. I think all of these lists need to be made public. So any company that wants to be anti-DEI can look to find any of these companies, any of these individuals being hired. People need to know that if they were involved in this racist grift, this sexist grift, this modern Jim Crowitization, that they will face punishment, that they will face long-term ramifications for their institutionalization of racism within America. Thoughts, Simone?
Yeah, my biggest concern, because we actually saw a lot of the preemptive naming even before inauguration of various DEI, is that we might see a ton of circumvention on this front. And that's something I'm a little bit concerned about. I really, and honestly, political witch hunts, I'm not that interested in them. I'm more just interested in, if someone's not helping to move things forward, why are they there in the first place?
I disagree. We need a witch hunt on this because these are witches. They are spreading a dark and racist ideology throughout the bureaucratic parts of American society. And as I said, I think the best way to fight this is for 4chan to unholster their autism and go full hog on this.
Maybe that's what needs to happen.
And
I'm much more interested in like actually having people in the federal government do work. I'm actually interested in getting rid of bureaucratic layers of nonsense, in addition to, of course, actively hostile agents, for sure. But I think that we're seeing that. We're seeing that with the hiring freeze. We're seeing that with like the OMBs coming in. The Office of Budget and Management is coming in strong. And I really think that this time around, they are going to get so much done. Already, they've been very effective.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the OMB this time.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about the private sector, you're like, okay, but this is only going to affect the government sector. So while the administration cannot mandate private companies to abandon their DEI policies, the executive order encourages them to do so by framing such policies as potentially violating federal rights laws. The order directs the Attorney General to explore enforcement methods against companies engaging in illegal discrimination through DEI practices. Framing DEI as illegal, the order characterizes DEI. Okay, then threats of investigations. The Attorney General is directed to identify up to 9 potential civil compliance investigation targets at large companies, nonprofits, and educational institutions. What a great, be specific. I want 9 large examples made. That's going to create a chilling effect. Way to go, Trump. Create uncertainty. The order's vague language about illegal DEI has led companies to seek counsel and review their DEI policies. Oh, chilling effect. The threat of being a target has caused some companies to preemptively scale back DEI initiatives. I mean, the big one we need to get is Google. I want Google to erase all of this. They have shown through their AI and everything like that, Google should be one of America's true champions. It should be our fight and bulwark against the evils of China and Russia and all of the various technological competitors we have on the world stage. And yet when you look at its idiotic AI that it keeps putting out that has been systemically racist, inserting Black people into pictures of history and everything like that, like if it did that for any other ethnicity, people would be like, wow, this is like created by a racist totalitarian state.
Yeah. I think the thesis of Richard Hanania's book about wokeism is that it emanated from the government. And I don't think you and I really agree that much with that thesis. I mean, yeah, things happened within the government that had influence, but it was more of a cultural shift. Still, it is interesting to see that already this new administration has had this profound of an impact on the private sector.
Yes.
I mean, just from the people who showed up on Inauguration Day to the organizational shifts we're already starting to see, it's clear that people are following the lead of the US government, which, I don't know, from like an operational standpoint, is not something I'm used to seeing.
Yes. And I think that the next thing that we should seriously consider is, well, you know, it's funny when you watch the mass deportations and everything like this. One of the things I'm seeing now, people in the UK, they're like, wait, can we do this? People in Canada are like, wait. This was an option? Can we look at implementing a little bit of this as well? I think around the world, what we're seeing is yeah, maybe we should look into this a little bit. And I think if they don't, what we're going to see in Canada and stuff like this, yes, people will be fleeing out of the US, but a lot of them are going to be fleeing into Canada. We see
Canada doesn't seem like the happiest place right now.
Yeah, illegal immigrants beginning. Well, because you got places like New York right now that are like tightening down on everything, and they're actually dealing with massive immigrant outflows right now because they have learned that, you know, maybe we shouldn't be acting as a safe haven for criminals. And then,
well, especially with their current spending problems, it's worrisome.
Yeah, you know, they're looking at a state collapse. And as I mentioned in a previous episode, one of the things the US should do, because this was talked about in the previous episode, I really think it's a good idea, is the US should go to Alberta and say, hey, why don't you guys do a referendum on who wants to join the US? And if we can get an overwhelming referendum in Alberta, you have two things. First, the Canadian government's going to freak out because they've been milking Alberta of all their money. Like, Alberta basically supports the rest of Canada at this point. Alberta hates the way Canada is being run. They're basically treated like a serf class by the rest of the country, forced to make money. I mean, Canada is like these little places that are like the capital in the Hunger Games. And then Alberta that's actually producing all of their money and food and energy. That's like, oh, well, those hick people, you know. I've always joked it's not a surprise that the trans crowd literally dresses like they're from the Capitol in the Hunger Games. Like, it is, you can't be pro this class and pro the working man. You know, you got to choose one. Are you for the oppressor or for the oppressed? You know, but anyway, so you get this Alberta, and if you could get Alberta voting, let's say like 70% or something like that, and I think we could, to join the US. You have a great Casabelli to move troops in there. And I think that what you might be able to negotiate as a Trump is a payout for it. It would probably be a decent payout, but I think that Canada would have a really hard time if you're offering both money. The people of the district don't want to be part of Canada anymore. You've already moved, you know, troops into the district. I think it'd be really hard for Canada to push against it at this point, especially when, you know, you point out the crimes that the Canadian government is allowing to happen there. When you point out the scale of the injustice that the Canadian government continues to allow to be purported against its own citizens, and that Canada doesn't really have a future of anything contiguous with what it used to be. I mean, everybody sees this. A small chunk like Alberta might, but most of it doesn't. And this is why the unaliving rates are so high in Canada right now. It's because nobody sees a future with the existing regime. And I think that what could be a bigger wake-up call than when they see, and at the very least, if you did this, if they didn't end up moving into the United States, what you're going to see in the next election cycle is people being like, hey, like, we actually need to treat our conservatives seriously because they don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think in the future, you know, maybe not immediately, though we are already starting to see it, is more and more capital flight as people become less anchored to geographical areas. So it's just going to accelerate the decline. There are so many factors that will make civilization and governmental declines happen so much faster than anyone thinks. Like, people expect, I think, for there to be multiple warning signs, when instead, by the time you really realize it's happening, it's already too late.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Anyway, so what do you want to do for dinner tonight, Simone? Am I going to reheat that chicken I had the other day, or that's probably bad at this point?
I probably wouldn't have it.
Okay, then let's go.
Would you like curry? Chicken curry?
No.
Do you prefer chicken curry? Do you want air fryer chicken? Basically,
air fryer chicken.
Okay.
You're gonna cook chicken tonight, right?
Not fresh. Oh, I tried to thaw some out, so maybe I can. It depends on what the status of the chicken I'm trying to thaw out is.
Yeah, I thought you were thawing some out.
I was, but every time I check on it, it's still like Ice Cube stage. So don't know what's going on there. That might actually make it easier for me to Reddit, depending on just how frozen it is. But if it is frozen, then I need to reheat. If it is not, then I will do something else. Does that
By the
work
way,
for you?
that works for me. Those are wondering, our entire family has been out with the flu for about a week. Like really, like we haven't been this sick since we got married, I think.
At the same time, no.
Not at the same time. Yeah. And it's been really difficult for us. And that's why my cheeks all puffy and everything. We don't know what's causing this. It could be an abscess. It could be a mumps. It could be any number of things. At first I thought it was swollen lymph nodes, but we don't know now.
Yeah. But we'll get better.
Yeah. No. And people are like, wait, why are you producing videos instead of recovering? It's like, we spent a week recovering, going through our backlog. Do you think we still had Christmas decorations behind us? Like,
it's been tough.
Anyway, I love you to death, Simone.
I love you too, Malcolm. You're amazing.
You're amazing.
We'll get through this.
Oh, I hope.
We watch the circus in full spin, where logic's tossed into the bin. Deporting felons, that's a crime, though victims waited all this time. Why are them so consistently evil? You can't both care for the grain and the weevil. Systemic racism and trauma will be the legacy of Obama. They holler justice up on high, yet shield to those who make them cry. They lecture loud with moral might, then pity crooks who love to fight. They say communities they prize, while turning blind and shutting eyes. If you point out the harm they do, it's you they'll call the bigot too. Why are them so consistently evil? You can't both care for the grain and the weevil. Systemic racism and trauma will be the legacy of Obama. When they leave the border agape, is those in shelters that bear the rape. They claim compassion's now at stake, but shun the folks those thugs forsake. So let them rant, let banners fly. We'll sigh and ask the reason why. Protecting wolves while flaying sheep, the far left tune they love to keep. Why are them so consistently evil? You can't both care for the grain and the weevil. Systemic racism and trauma will be the legacy of Obama. Why are them so consistently evil? You can't both care for the grain and the weevil. Systemic racism and trauma will be the legacy of Obama. They holler justice up on high, yet shield of those who make them cry. They lecture loud